You know the stories about Nazi-occupied Paris, the German officers in their sleek uniforms, the collaborators in shadows, the resistance fighters hiding in the sewers. But almost nobody talks about the building in the 16th arrondissement where screams echoed through the walls every single night for 4 years straight. 93 Rue Lauriston, a mansion where criminals ran the French Gestapo, where a petty thief with a high voice became the king of Nazi Paris, where prisoners had their fingernails torn out in the cellar while champagne flowed upstairs, and where, on December 26, 1944, the man who ruled this empire of torture spent his final morning smoking cigarettes before a firing squad. Who was he? How did a street criminal end up commanding 100 gangsters for the SS? And what happened in those last 24 hours when everything caught up with him? The building sits quiet now at 93 Rue Lauriston. 3 floors, high ceilings, large windows facing the street. In the 16th arrondissement, where ambassadors and bankers live. 2 blocks from Avenue Foch, where the German High Command set up headquarters. Today, there's a plaque on the wall. Simple words in French. In memory of the resistance fighters tortured in this house during the occupation 1940 to 1944 by French agents, auxiliary to the Gestapo, from the group known as Bony-Lafont. But that plaque does not tell you what happened inside. The steel-lined second-floor offices, the converted servant quarters on the 3rd floor turned into cells, the soundproof cellar with 3 execution posts, or the Saturday night parties where actresses mixed with SS officers before heading out in white Bentleys while down below, men screamed through water torture and electric shocks. The man who ran this place was not even called Henri Lafont. His real name was Henri Louis Chamberlain. Born April 22, 1902 in the 13th arrondissement of Paris. Working class family. Father was a typesetter. Mother cleaned houses. In 1913, when Henri was 11 years old, his father died. His mother abandoned him the same day, the day of the burial. Just walked away. He wandered Les Halles Market, worked as a courier, a laborer, whatever paid. In 1919, at 17, he stole his boss's bicycle after the man took his tip, 5 francs, 1 day of wages. They sent him to juvenile detention until he turned 18. When he got out, they drafted him. 39th Regiment of Algerian Tirailleurs. 2 years of service, 0 punishments, his lawyer would later say at trial. Clean record. Then civilian life broke him. He married a woman named Arzia Rebecki on April 26, 1926, in the prison of Aix-en-Provence. Had 2 children, Pierre and Henriette, but he kept getting arrested, receiving stolen property. 2 years in prison, plus 10 years banishment from Paris. While locked up, his wife stole 2,000 francs from her employer's register to run off with another man. That got him sent to the penal colony in Cayenne. He escaped, changed his name to Norman, then to Lafont. By early 1940, he was running a Simca dealership at Porte des Lilas under the name Henri Normand, making contacts with cops. In March, he became manager of the police prefecture social club. Then the Germans invaded. In June 1940, they sent him to Cherché-Midi prison for desertion from a volunteer brigade. Then, as the Wehrmacht advanced, they moved him to a camp at Sepoy. That camp changed everything. He met a German spy named Karl Hennecke, a Swiss spy named Max Stucklin, who had worked for Abwehr agent Hermann Brandl since 1934. When they escaped, Lafont went with them, returned to occupied Paris with members of German intelligence. He later admitted if the resistance had approached him first, he would have joined them, no question. He just wanted power. Any power? The Abwehr put him to work. Max Stucklin set him up on Rue Tiquetonne in a purchasing office for the Wehrmacht, buying clothes, furniture, food. Business boomed. He opened a second location on Rue Cadet, a third on Rue de Faubourg Saint-Antoine, but the space was too small. In July 1940, he recruited 27 convicted criminals from Fresnes prison with German officer Wilhelm Radeke. His superior, Colonel Oskar Rilo, ordered his arrest for freeing prisoners. Radeke warned him, told him to capture someone important, Otto Lambrecht, former Belgian spy master, anti-Nazi resistance leader wanted by the Abwehr. Lafont went to the free zone and grabbed him. Drove him back to Paris, bound hand and foot in his car trunk. Tortured him personally in Gestapo headquarters. That when captured, dismantled Belgian counter-espionage. 600 people arrested. The Germans gave Lafont police badge number 6474R. By May 1941, he moved into 93 Rue Lauriston. Before the war, the building belonged to Madame Weinberg. Now it was requisitioned. Lafont loved the garden out back, the vast cellars down below where you could torture people without neighbors hearing. He surrounded himself with criminals, professional thieves, murderers, corrupt cops. The best known was Pierre Bony, born January 25, 1895. once praised as the most talented police officer in France. Investigating officer in the 1923 Seznek case accused of falsifying evidence, helped solve the 1934 Stavisky financial scandal. In 1935, they jailed him 3 years for corruption, selling influence, taking bribes. When Lafont needed organization, Bony provided it, the number 2 to Lafont's empire. Together they commanded about 100 permanent members, gangsters, ex-cops, North African mercenaries, recruited from the rough neighborhoods for a couple hundred francs. They called themselves the Carlingue, means the cabin of an aircraft, structure and strength. If you value documented war crime history and occupation-era operations like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. Also, this script is researched and factual using sources from Christopher Othen's The King of Nazi Paris, published by Biteback Publishing in 2020, primary trial transcripts from the Cour de Justice de la Seine, December 1944, archived at Criminal Corpus, and Henri Lafont first-hand police accounts from Conformément à l'ordre de nos chefs, published 1995. These are not secondary summaries. These are trial documents, police records, and scholarly monographs with hundreds of footnotes tracing back to original Gestapo correspondence and resistance testimony. Now back to the information. The Germans officially called them Active Group Hesse, after the SS officer who helped found them. Reich Security Main Office gave that designation, but Parisians knew them as the Bony-Lafont gang, the French Gestapo. When the German SIPO started recruiting 2,000 auxiliary policemen in 1940, they received 6,000 applications. Everyone wanted power. In 1941, the Carlingue was officially formed by the RSHA. Purpose: counterinsurgency operations against the Maquis. Resistance forces in occupied and Vichy France. Lafont recruited from his world Pierre Loutrel, alias Pierrot le Fou, Crazy Pete. Criminal in the Parisian underworld since before the war, the partly criminal nature gave them access, informers, corrupt officials, black market contacts like Joseph Jonovici. They were also active in the black market themselves, buying low, selling high, looting Jewish properties, running gold scams, stealing art, protection rackets, intercepting parachute drops, infiltrating resistance groups, gunning down rivals, springing anyone from prison for the right price. In 1942, the Carlingue came under direct Gestapo authority. Lafont outdid himself, pleasing his superiors, gave a sumptuous Bentley as a wedding gift to Helmut Nocken, aide to Heydrich charged with bringing the secret police to France. That year, Lafont reached an understanding with the Devonschutz Commando at 5 Rue Pillet-Will, Currency Security Detachment. Very lucrative battle against the black market. By 1942, Lafont had become a German citizen, a captain in the SS and Gestapo. Within 2 years, gang members began publicly wearing German uniforms. Most French citizens feared this organization and the milice more than they feared actual Germans. These were Frenchmen. They knew the dialects, the customs, the landscape. Infiltrating resistance networks was easy. No one knew who was friend or foe. The torture methods were documented in trial testimony, December 1944. Prisoners had fingernails torn out, teeth filed down, beaten with fists and boots, kicked repeatedly, burned with cigarettes and welding torches, water torture in the bathtub, electric shocks to genitals and limbs. The gang allegedly carried out assassinations sponsored by the Germans. The building at 93 had steel-lined offices on the second floor. Former servants' quarters on the third floor converted to cells. Neighbors heard screams through the night. Torture chambers on the third floor. An execution room in the soundproof basement with 3 posts. The gang also occupied 3 bis Place des États-Unis. Floors converted to cells and interrogation rooms, 10-minute walk between locations. On July 20th, 1943, Pierre Bony personally arrested Geneviève de Gaulle, niece of the general. She was among 60 members of the Défense de la France network the gang took down. Heavy losses, but the network survived. Other Parisian Gestapo groups existed. The Corsican Gang, the Neuilly Gestapo directed by Frédéric Martin, alias Rudy de Merode, associated with Gédéon van Houten. Lafont's gang, with full Gestapo support, got these competitors deported. At the beginning of 1944, Lafont and Algerian nationalist Mohammed al-Dashmadi created the secret right-wing North African Legion. Al-Dashmadi was a former French officer of La Cagoule. The Legion was made up of men from North Africa. They wore milice uniforms, saw combat against the Résistance intérieure Française, the Maquis du Limousin. 3 sections fought the Maquis de Corrèze, notably at Tulle, then the Périgord and Dordogne. Massacre of 52 hostages at Moussidon, 23 hostages executed at Saint-Dash-Marie-de-Chignac. 26 hostages, including Georges Dumas, shot in an abandoned quarry near Brantôme on the command of Alexandre Villeplain. Another section in Franche-Comté. The Legion dissolved in July 1944. Some members went with Al-Mahdi to Germany. Others joined the Free India Legion, but while the gang tortured and killed downstairs, they lived like kings upstairs. Lafont wore the finest clothes, ate at the best restaurants, did whatever he wanted. Every Saturday night he hosted parties at 93 Rue Lauriston. Collaborationists mixed with ambitious young actresses, well-mannered German officers. Edith Piaf attended, Tino Rossi. Then everyone headed to nightclubs in one of Lafont's white Bentleys. Champagne, caviar by the bucketful, orchids and dahlias everywhere. Lafont loved orchids. He had affairs with high society women. Protection from the SS meant he could operate openly. He even brought girls from the 122, the famous brothel on Rue de Provence run by Madame Fabienne Jamet. Lafont was on familiar terms with René Bousquet and Pierre Laval. But relationships with other collaborators like Fernand de Brinon were poor. He settled disputes, arranged protection. People came paying respect like he was the French godfather. Even Maurice Chevalier came asking a favor. He had been criticized for performing in occupation reviews, though he was hiding a Jewish family in the free zone. Lafont helped. He also helped Violette Morris, troubled bisexual race car driver, prominent athlete, cigar smoker, collaborator. She later became an active torturer for the Carlingue. In April 1944, while hunting partisans in Normandy, the resistance shot her dead. The system worked on penalties, fines to death. Anyone who did not obey Lafont's rules got sanctioned. He reigned over about 100 permanent felons with almost complete immunity. His motto was, "Everyone is for sale, you just have to know how to buy." The gang dismantled resistance networks, tracked down Jews, worked black market deals. All the Germans had to do was point. Lafont's close relationship with Pierre Laval, the Prime Minister of Vichy France, later proved most damaging to the French government during his trial. In August 1944, collaborators fled Paris, Sigmaringen, Baden, Baden, Steinhorst, but Lafont stayed in France. He was confident, maybe too confident. He installed himself at his farm, Les Basselins, at Bazoches-sur-le-Betz, southeast of Paris, leaving behind the abandoned offices at Rue Lauriston. He asked Pierre Bony to destroy the files. Lafont brought his mistress. His two children, Pierre and Henriette, Bony and Bony's family. They planned to wait until things normalized, then flee to Spain and recover part of their accumulated treasure. But the roads were not safe. Racketeering was possible. The F.F.I. requisitioned their cars, a Bentley and a Jaguar. This forced Lafont to send Bony's son to Paris by bicycle to get cars from Joseph Jonovici, but Jonovici had his own problems. Despite being a Ukrainian Jew, he made a fortune selling scrap iron to the Germans, supplying black market goods, cooperating with the Rue Lauriston gang. Come liberation, he was more intent on saving his own skin than remaining loyal. He betrayed them. On Thursday, August 31st, 1944, resistance fighters arrested Henri Lafont and Pierre Bony at the Bazoches farm. Police found 2.5 million francs in small bills in a laundry basket. Later reports said 10 million francs total plus jewelry. The white Bentley was never located. The farm was suspected of being a French Odessa used by Gestapo to get men out of France. They brought Bony and Lafont to the conciergerie for interrogation. When they put him before the investigating magistrate, Pierre Bony confessed everything. He implicated more than 1,000 other people in the Rue Lauriston affair. A wave of panic swept Paris, especially after discovery of the black market and false resistance certificates. The trial started December 1st, 1944, ended December 11th, 12 defendants total, Bony and Lafont, Paul Clavier, Louis Hare, André Engel, Alexandre Villeplain, Louis Pagnon, Charles Delval, Maurice Tate, Jacques Bussière, Jean Dache, Damien Lascaux, Edmond de la Haye, who died on the morning of the last day of trial. The court heard sordid details, bathtub torture, the basement execution chamber, the accumulated wealth. A few people testified on Lafont's behalf, resistance fighters for whom he had done favors, whose family members he had saved, but the evidence was overwhelming. The trial lasted 25 days. Prosecutor later said they could not even estimate the total number of victims. The judges tried. They could not come up with a final figure. Too many. When the verdict condemning them both to death was read, Pierre Bony had to be held up by the gendarmes. His legs gave out, but Lafont seemed very relaxed, a smile on his lips. Defended by lawyers, Maître Floriot, Delaunay, and Casanova. After the verdict, they separated the condemned. Bony went to his cell, Lafont to his. The date was set, December 26, 1944, the day after Christmas, Fort de Montrouge in Arquet, 2 kilometers from Port d'Orléans. Just meters from road number 20, where French and American troops had entered Paris on August 24th. Yesterday was Christmas. Cold weather invaded the country. Temperatures hit 10 degrees below zero in Nancy, colder than anything since November 1942. In those final 24 hours, Bony wrote letters, reflected. He had been a cop, a great cop, he claimed. Then he became what he called a son of a bitch. At one time, they praised him as exceptionally capable. Now everyone had proof of his crimes. He had no scruples, no regrets, he said. But when verdict came, he collapsed. Lafont spent his final hours differently. Calm. He met with his lawyer, Maître Drieux, smoked cigarettes. The night before execution, he reportedly slept well. No nightmares, no breakdown. The man who had tortured hundreds faced his own death with the same cold calculation he had used on others. On the morning of December 26, they came for him. Standard procedure for firing squad. Hands bound, led from cell to courtyard. Fort de Montrouge was where they executed collaborators and war criminals. The execution ground was prepared. A post, a wall, a squad of soldiers with rifles. At 9:50 on December 26, 1944, they brought Henri Chamberlain, called Lafont, to the execution post. Moments before facing the firing squad, he spoke to his lawyer, Maître Drieux. His final words were recorded, "I regret nothing, madame. 4 years surrounded by orchids, dahlias, and Bentleys were worth it. I have lived 10 times faster is all. Tell my son to always stay out of the caves. May he be a man like his father." He declined the blindfold, standard offer before execution. He refused it, died tied to the stake, bareheaded, with a cigarette between his lips. The firing squad aimed. On command, they fired. Henri Lafont died instantly, 42 years old. But the killing was not finished. Alexandre Villaplane faced the squad that same day. Former footballer turned criminal. Then Paul Clavier, André Engel, Louis Hare, all executed December 27, 1944 at Fort Montrouge. Louis Eddy Pagnon, member of the North African Brigade, also shot December 27. 7 men total in 2 days. Pierre Bony's execution came December 27, not 26, as some sources claim. Other sources say December 29th. Trial records confirm 27. When his turn came, he needed support. Could barely walk. Guards held him up. No final words recorded. No cigarette. No defiance. He died the way he faced verdict. Broken. The trials continued. Charles Delval executed in the courtyard of Frayne Prison, February 1945. Gagnols executed at Fort Montrouge, June $24, 1946. Jourdain executed Fort Montrouge, July 13 Astor, 1946. Marcel Bouat sentenced to death. June 1946, executed at Versailles, August 12, 1946. Pierre Loutrel Crazy, Pete evaded capture. Died November 6, 1946, 5 days after being shot in the bladder during a jewelry store robbery on Avenue Kléber. Bernard Fallot executed Fort Montrouge. October 1st, 1947. Maurice Bay executed May 5th, 1950. Abel Danos shot March 13th, 1952. Raymond Monange, officer from the North African Brigade, shot March 13th, 1952 at Fort Montrouge. But what about the building? 93 Rue Lauriston stood empty for months after liberation. Then new tenants. The building changed hands. In 2009, the mayor of the 16th arrondissement tried to change the address to 91 bis Rue Lauriston. His goal was erasing the monstrous past. The tenant, Franco-Arab Chamber of Commerce, threatened to move unless the address changed. In August 2014, the Paris government ordered current owners to restore the memorial plaque. The plaque that hangs there today, simple, direct. In homage to the resistance tortured in this house during the occupation, 1940 to 1944, by French agents, auxiliary agents of the Gestapo from the group known as Bony-Lafont. The neighbors still know. People still spit when they pass. Tour guides pointed out. The building where French criminals ran the Gestapo, where Saturday night parties happened upstairs while torture continued in the cellar, where a petty thief who stole a bicycle at 17 ended up commanding 100 gangsters for the SS, where screams echoed for 4 years, where a man faced a firing squad with a cigarette and no regrets. The final 24 hours reveal the nature of the operation. No grand ideology, no political conviction. Lafont himself said if the resistance had recruited him first, he would have joined them. It was about power, money. Living 10 times faster. 4 years of orchids and Bentley cars, champagne and caviar, the finest clothes, the most beautiful women, all bought with torture and murder, all paid for with Jewish property and resistance blood. When the end came, Lafont did not beg, did not apologize. just calculated that 4 years of that life was worth dying for. Pierre Bony represented something different, a cop who became corrupt, once respected, once called the most talented police officer in France, the Stavisky scandal, the Cesnet case, then corruption charges, then collaboration, from badge to butcher. When verdict came, he collapsed. When execution came, he needed help standing. The contrast between the two men in their final hours shows the range of collaboration. Lafont, the career criminal unbothered, Bony, the fallen cop, broken. But the real victims were never in that courtyard. The resistance tortured on the third floor, the Jews betrayed for bounties, the Maquis fighters hunted down, Geneviève de Gaulle arrested July 20th. 1943 survived, many did not. The 60 members of Défense de la France network, the gang arrested. How many survived? The victims of the North African Legion, 52 hostages massacred at Moussidane, 23 executed at Sainte-Dache-Marie-de-Chignac, 26 shot in a quarry near Brantôme, including Georges Dumas. All on orders from gang members. The trial tried to count victims. Failed. Too many. The investigating magistrate Pierre Bony confessed to said the number implicated over 1,000 people, not victims, accomplices. People who helped. Informers. Corrupt officials. Black market dealers. The full scope of the Rue Lauriston operation touched thousands. When Bony started talking, a wave of panic hit Paris. Who would he name? Who had taken money? Who had looked away? The discovery of the black market and false resistance certificates proved especially damaging. People who never fought claiming they did, buying fake credentials from the gang that hunted real resistance. The Germans kept excellent records. After liberation, investigators found files, correspondence, payment records. The Gestapo documentation of Carlingue operations filled boxes. Trial prosecutors had so much evidence they struggled to organize it. The sheer volume of crimes, tracking down Jews for deportation, intercepting resistance supply drops, infiltrating networks, torturing prisoners, executing hostages, running black market operations, all documented, all traced back to 93 Rue Lauriston. If you value documented war crime history and occupation era operations like this, subscribe. It is the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the information. The question trial never fully answered was how many people went through that building, prisoners brought for interrogation, how many walked out, how many died in the cellar, how many got handed to the Gestapo. The soundproof basement had 3 execution posts. Why 3? For efficiency. Execute multiple prisoners simultaneously. The neighbors heard screams despite soundproofing. What does that tell you about the volume? About the frequency? The building's structure enabled the operation. Steel-lined offices on the second floor. Lafont's personal workspace. No one could break in. No one could break out. Security office, records, storage. The third floor had former servants' quarters, small rooms, easy to convert to cells. Lock prisoners separately. Prevent communication. Prevent organized resistance. The basement connected to the garden. Bodies could be moved at night. No street visibility. The garden itself had high walls. Privacy for arrivals and departures. The location in the 16th arrondissement provided cover. Respectable neighborhood. Ambassadors nearby. German High Command 2 blocks away at Avenue Foch. The Gestapo themselves at 84 Avenue Foch. Coordinated operations easy. Shared intelligence. Shared prisoners. The parties served a purpose beyond pleasure. Networking. Lafont met potential informers, identified resistance sympathizers among the collaborationist crowd, gathered intelligence from drunk actresses who heard things. SS officers shared operational updates. Vichy officials discussed policy, all while champagne flowed and orchestras played. The contrast was deliberate. Upstairs refinement and culture, downstairs screams and blood. The message was clear: cooperate and enjoy the party. Resist and visit the cellar. The recruitment from prisons was systematic. July 1940, Lafont and Radique freed 27 felons from French prison, gave them choice: work for us or rot. Most chose work. The offer was simple: immunity for past crimes, pay for current crimes, protection from enemies, access to stolen goods. Some recruits were murderers, some were thieves, some were just violent. All were useful. The Germans understood that fighting resistance required people who knew the streets, who had contacts, who were not afraid to hurt people. The black market operations funded everything. When you loot a Jewish apartment, you take paintings worth hundreds of thousands of francs, jewelry, cash, gold, sell it through your network, keep a cut, pay your gang, pay your informers, buy cars, buy clothes, buy champagne. The cycle continues. The Devonshires Commando Currency Security Detachment deal Lafont struck in early 1942 was brilliant. The Germans tasked that unit with fighting black market. Lafont ran black market, so he made a deal. Lafont provides intelligence on competitors. Gets to keep operating. The DSK gets arrests to show their superiors. Everyone wins except the Jews being robbed and the resistance being hunted. The relationship with Pierre Laval, the Vichy Prime Minister, proved most damaging at trial, not because Laval ordered specific crimes, because the connection showed how high collaboration went. Lafont was not a rogue operator. He was part of the system. Laval knew him. Bousquet knew him. German officers knew him. He attended official functions. He was protected. That made every crime he committed a crime the French state enabled. That made every torture session something the Vichy government permitted. That made every execution something French officials allowed. When liberation came in August 1944, the scramble began. Lafont ordered Carlingue dismantled. Files burned. Gang members fled. Some made it to Germany, some to Spain, some into hiding. But Lafont stayed. Why? Confidence. He had helped some resistance members, saved some Jews. Maybe he thought that would matter. Maybe he thought his connections would protect him. Maybe he thought he could buy his way out. He was wrong. The resistance wanted blood. The French public wanted justice. The provisional government wanted to show France was purging collaboration. Lafont was the perfect target. Famous. Brutal. Connected to Vichy. His trial would demonstrate the new France rejecting the old. The farm at Bazoches, where they arrested him, was supposed to be escape route. Remote location. Stocked with cash. Multiple vehicles. Plan was wait for heat to die down, then drive to Spain, cross the border, disappear. But Joseph Joanowiczi's betrayal ended that. Joanowiczi knew the hiding spot, told the resistance. The raid happened fast. Lafont and Bony had no time to run, no time to fight, just capture. The 2.5 million francs in the laundry basket became evidence. The 10 million francs, total plus jewelry, proved the scale of theft. The missing white Bentley became a symbol. Even at the end, Lafont had hidden assets no one could find. The speed of the trial shocked some observers. Arrested August 31st. Trial started December 1st. Verdict December 11th. Execution December 26 and 27. Less than 4 months from arrest to death. But France was still at war. Germany had not surrendered. The battle for France was barely finished. Quick justice sent a message: collaborate and die. The purge of collaborators. The epuration continued for years. Thousands executed. Tens of thousands jailed. Women accused of horizontal collaboration with Germans had heads shaved, paraded through streets. The Carlingue members got trials. Many victims never did. The contrast with Nuremberg is stark. The major Nazi war criminals got trials that lasted months. International tribunal. Detailed evidence. Appeals. Many got prison, not death. But Lafont got 3 weeks in a firing squad. Why? Because he was French killing French. Because France needed to show it was dealing with collaboration. Because the resistance members on the jury wanted revenge. The chief judge was assisted by 4 judges/jury members chosen specifically for membership in the resistance. Not exactly impartial, but impartiality was hard to find in those times. Everyone had been touched by occupation. Everyone had lost someone. Finding judges who had no opinion about the French Gestapo was impossible. The execution procedure at Fort Montrouge was standard for the period. Condemned brought from holding cell, hands bound, led to courtyard. Post secured and ground against wall, condemned tied to post at chest level, firing squad lined up, usually 12 soldiers, rifles loaded, some loaded with blanks, so no one knew who fired kill shots. Commander gives order, squad raises rifles, aims at chest, commander gives second order, squad fires. If condemned survives, squad commander approaches with pistol and delivers coup de grace to head, but usually the first volley killed. Lafont chose to die with dignity by his own twisted standards. No blindfold meant he watched the squad aim, watched the commander raise his arm, saw the flash of the rifles. That took courage, or sociopathy. Hard to say which. The cigarette between his lips was gesture, cool, controlled. The man who lived 10 times faster, dying on his terms. His final words to his lawyer were calculated. I regret nothing. Defiant. 4 years surrounded by orchids, dahlias, and Bentleys were worth it. Unapologetic. Tell my son to stay out of the caves. Advice to avoid the fate he earned. May he be a man like his father. Pride in being a monster. But Pierre Bony's final hours show a different pattern. The collapse at verdict. The letters to his wife. The need for guards to hold him upright at execution. Bony had been something before he became butcher. A cop. An investigator. Someone with a badge and authority. The transformation into Gestapo auxiliary destroyed something in him. When he faced death, he faced what he had become. Lafont never changed. Criminal to bigger criminal. Bony fell, and knew he fell. The wave of panic that swept Paris after Bony started confessing showed scope of collaboration. Over 1,000 people implicated. Not all were killers. Some were informers who reported suspicious neighbors. Some were businessmen who profited from Jewish property theft. Some were officials who looked away. Some were cops who helped. All were part of the machine that kept 93 Rue Lauriston operating. Every informer who reported a resistance member, every official who signed a deportation order, every businessman who bought stolen art, every neighbor who heard screams and said nothing. All complicit. The discovery of the black market and false resistance certificates revealed another layer. After liberation, everyone claimed they had resisted. Collaborated. Never. I fought the Germans. Where is your proof? I was part of a network. Which one? One that stayed secret. Very convenient. Except the Carlingue had been selling fake resistance credentials. For people who wanted insurance after liberation, pay the fee, get documents showing you were in the resistance. Except now those documents were evidence of collaboration. Buying fake resistance papers from the gang, hunting real resistance was about as collaborative as you could get. The building at 93 Rue Lauriston stands today. The plaque is small. The building is ordinary from outside. You can walk past without noticing, but locals know. The boulangerie across the street knows. The concierge knows. Residents know. No one wants to live there. The address tried to change, failed. The building carries the weight. Sometimes history sticks to a location. Sometimes crimes are so numerous the ground remembers. Sometimes screams echo decades later even when the building is silent. In 2020, Christopher Othen published The King of Nazi Paris, detailed biography of Lafont, based on French archives, trial documents, Gestapo records, resistance testimony. The book runs over 300 pages. That much documentation exists. That much evidence survived. Multiple other books cover the Carlingue, multiple films, the 2004 television movie 93 Rue Lauriston, Louis Malle's 1974 film Le Comte Lucien, featuring characters based on the gang. The French have not forgotten, will not forget, cannot forget. The memorial plaque says it simply, in memory of the resistance tortured in this house, but it does not name them. It does not list them, because there were too many, because not all names survived, because some victims were nameless when they arrived. Jewish refugees with no papers, resistance fighters using false identities, foreign agents operating under aliases. Some bodies were never found. Some prisoners disappeared, handed to Germans, sent to camps, executed in the basement and buried in the garden. When investigators dug up the garden after liberation, what did they find? Records do not say, but 3 execution posts do not go unused. The final detail that reframes everything is Auguste Ricoeur, member of the Carlingue, Lafont's employee. Avoided prosecution after the war, fled to South America. In September 1972, the United States arrested him for drug smuggling, the French Connection heroin network. Investigators traced financing back to the Carlingue. Money Lafont stole from Jews and resistance members in the 1940s funded international drug trafficking in the 60s and 70s. Auguste Ricoeur served 10 years in American prison, 1972 to 1982. Never retried for war crimes. The crimes at 93 Rue Lauriston had echoes that lasted decades. Blood money invested in heroin, stolen Jewish gold funding cartels. The collaboration did not end at liberation. It metastasized. So the final 24 hours of the Paris security chief at 93 Rue Lauriston ended with a cigarette and a firing squad. But the story did not end there. It echoes. In the plaque on the wall, in the memory of survivors, in the trial transcripts archived at Criminal Corpus, in the books that keep documenting, in the tourists who stop and stare, in the locals who spit. Henri Lafont died December 26, 1944, at 42 years old. He lived 10 times faster. He said, 4 years of orchids and Bentley cars, worth dying for, he claimed. But what about the hundreds who died screaming in his cellar? What about the resistance fighters tortured on his 3rd floor? What about the Jews he hunted for bounties? What about the collaborators he enabled? What about the corruption he spread? What about the false resistance certificates he sold? What about the decades of heroin trafficking his money funded? Lafont died in minutes. His victims died for hours. Some died for years in camps. Some carry the scars forever. 10 times faster does not erase 10,000 times the pain. Cold, December, 1944.